Ancient stones across the world tell a single, silent story. This is the profound mystery of the global language of stone, a forgotten code shared by civilizations separated by oceans and millennia. By the end of this journey, you will see the ruins of our past with completely new eyes. How did cultures who never met build with identical astronomical precision? And why do the same sacred symbols appear on opposite sides of the planet? What does this hidden connection reveal about our own forgotten history? This silent dialect is written in geometry, in the angles of the sun, and in the sheer scale of stone. It is a language without words, where the structures themselves are the vocabulary. The foundational principles are shockingly consistent. We see a repeated obsession with cardinal directions, with structures aligned to true north or the solstice sunrises with a precision that defies coincidence. The very stone speaks of a shared understanding of immense forces, a knowledge of how to cut and move multi-ton blocks so perfectly that a razor blade cannot slip between them. This architectural grammar appears in the Cyclopean walls of Peru, the impossible interlocking of Japan's Yonaguni Monument, and the haunting moe of Easter Island. Each culture, in its own isolated corner of the world, was apparently reading from the same advanced construction manual. This points to a sophistication that rewrites our understanding of ancient technology. How could hunter-gatherers, as they are often depicted, possess such a unified and advanced engineering intellect? The clues are not just carved into the earth, but etched across the night sky, suggesting the original architects were looking upward for their ultimate blueprint. But the stones do not just speak of engineering, they whisper of the stars. Our first clue in this global puzzle is the uncanny precision with which ancient structures align with celestial bodies. This is not a matter of rough estimation. It is a science of breathtaking accuracy, repeated across the globe as if by a single hand. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure so perfectly oriented to true north that its alignment is more precise than that of the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, London. Then shift your gaze to the American Southwest, where a single sliver of sunlight, known as the Sun Dagger, pierces a spiral carving in Chaco Canyon to mark the summer and winter solstices with absolute clarity. These are not isolated incidents. The same principles are carved into the Salisbury Plain at Stonehenge, where the heel stone frames the rising sun on the summer solstice. They are baked into the bricks of the Temple of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico, aligned to the Pleiades star cluster. They are even found in the oldest free-standing stone structures on Earth, the Mnajdra temples in Malta, which are perfectly positioned to capture the equinox sunrise. From the deserts of Egypt to the highlands of Peru, the message is the same. A profound understanding of the cosmos was not a local discovery, it was a global inheritance. This widespread, identical application of astronomy implies a shared, advanced knowledge of mathematics and the movement of the heavens. How could cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years develop such complex and identical calendrical systems entirely independently? The odds against such a coincidence are astronomical in their own right. This celestial connection points to something deeper than parallel development. It suggests a common source, a foundational teacher whose knowledge was so complete. It was written not on parchment, but in the very alignment of the earth and sky. The question of who that teacher was, whether a lost human civilization or something even more mysterious, is written in the silent language of the stars. While the stars provided a celestial map, the builders on the ground required a common ruler. The stones themselves hold the next piece of the puzzle, a secret encoded not in their alignment but in their spacing. A meticulous survey of hundreds of ancient stone circles across Britain and Brittany revealed something that should not exist. Archaeologist Alexander Thom identified a precise and consistent unit of measurement used in their construction, a length he termed the Megalithic Yard. This was not a rough estimate. It was a standardized unit of exactly 2.72 feet, repeated with mathematical regularity across hundreds of sites separated by vast distances. The implication is staggering. A prehistoric tape measure, invisible to us, was once in common use. This concept of a universal standard becomes even more profound when we look beyond Europe. The ancient Mesopotamians used a unit called the cush, while the builders of the great Mesoamerican pyramids employed the standard hanab. When these ancient measures are converted and compared, they often resolve into simple, harmonious fractions of the Earth's own dimensions. It is as if every great civilization was independently using a different dialect of the same fundamental measurement language. This cannot be explained by chance. A hunter-gatherer society does not spontaneously invent and then disseminate a complex, standardized unit of measure across an entire continent. The use of the megalithic yard speaks of a shared blueprint, a transfer of technical knowledge that required not only advanced mathematics but also a means of communication. This points to a coordinated effort, a school of thought that transcended local tribes and cultures. The very existence of this forgotten standard forces us to ask who wrote the original blueprint. Was there a single advanced source civilization, a teacher of the world, whose technological heritage was all that remained after a great cataclysm? The silent, consistent spacing between ancient stones may be the most compelling evidence we have of a connected, global civilization lost to time. This shared geometry of measurement points toward a shared understanding of the Earth itself, but what happens when that Earth begins to shake? The third mystery is carved into the very walls that have withstood millennia of tremors. Look at the colossal fortress of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. Its ramparts are a mosaic of gigantic limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. Yet these are not simple rectangles. They are irregular polygons, each with numerous sides and angles, fitting together so perfectly that the entire structure resembles a single, continuous stone surface. This is polygonal masonry, and it is a technological marvel found in the foundations of ancient Greece, in the submerged ruins of Japan, and across the highlands of Peru. Why would cultures separated by oceans all develop this same incredibly complex and labor-intensive method? The answer lies not in art, but in survival. This design is a masterclass in earthquake engineering. When the ground shakes, a rigid, rectangular wall built with mortar will crack and collapse, but a wall of interlocking polygonal stones behaves differently. The irregular joints and the sheer weight of the blocks allow the entire structure to shift and settle during a seismic event. The stones move and grind against each other, dissipating the energy of the quake, and then they settle back into place, locked together once more. It is a gigantic, three-dimensional puzzle designed to flex with the planet's violence. The profound implication is that these ancient builders possessed a deep, scientific understanding of seismic forces. They knew the Earth could be unstable, and they developed a sophisticated, identical solution to the problem, a solution that modern engineers still study with admiration. This is not a case of parallel development. It is the signature of a globally disseminated survival strategy. Who first discovered that a wall of interlocking puzzles could outlast the rage of the planet? And why was this critical knowledge carried to the farthest corners of the ancient world? Beyond the measurements and the masonry, a more elusive symbol is carved into the memory of humanity itself. a serpent slithers through the mythologies of the world, a shared thread in the global tapestry of belief. In India, the Nagas are divine serpents of profound wisdom. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Kukulkan, or Quetzalcoatl, descends the pyramid at Chichen Itza as a shadow of light and shadow, a symbol of creation and celestial knowledge. In Norse legends, the great world serpent Jormungandr encircles the earth, and in China, the dragon represents primordial power and the very flow of the natural world. This is not a collection of random monster stories. The consistency is breathtaking. Across continents and cultures, the serpent is repeatedly linked to the same profound concepts: knowledge, the underworld, and the very act of creation. When we view this through the lens of the global language of stone, a fascinating pattern emerges. These serpents are almost universally connected to the Earth's hidden energies. They are associated with water, with underground rivers, and with the mysterious telluric currents that some ancient cultures seem to sense and build upon. The plumed serpent is a bringer of water and civilization. The dragon commands the rains and rivers. This recurring motif suggests that these cultures were not just sharing a scary animal tale. They were expressing a shared cosmological understanding, a unified vision of the world as a living being crisscrossed by energies often symbolized by the serpent's form. Why would a symbol for hidden earth energies and cosmic knowledge appear so consistently? It points to a common source, a foundational mythology that spread across the globe, adapting to local cultures but retaining its core meaning. This archetype is so deeply embedded in our collective past that it feels less like an invention and more like a memory, a powerful echo from a time when humanity possessed a unified spiritual language, a language now written in stone and myth. The stones do not only speak to our eyes, they were also built to sing. A fifth layer of this global mystery is written not in geometry, but in vibration, a deliberate sonic engineering that modern science is only just beginning to decode. Deep within the hypogeum of Malta, an underground labyrinth carved over 5,000 years ago, lies the oracle chamber. Here, a deep male voice spoken into a specific niche is transformed. The sound is amplified and distorted, its lower frequencies resonating through the very rock, vibrating through your bones and filling the entire chamber with an otherworldly hum. This is not a random acoustic fluke. It is a precise manipulation of sound waves designed to create an experience that could alter human consciousness. This phenomenon echoes across the world. At the Mayan pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, if you clap your hands at the base of the monumental staircase, the sound does not return as a simple echo. It comes back as the distinct chirp of the sacred Quetzal bird, a perfect sonic representation of the feathered serpent god for whom the temple was built. In the fields of Carnac in France, some of the thousands of standing stones, when struck with a small rock, produce a clear metallic ring like a bell. These stones were carefully chosen for their lithophonic properties, their ability to make music. From Malta to Mexico to France, we see the same principle, a sophisticated understanding of resonant frequencies. Why was this knowledge so universal? Sound, especially at certain frequencies, can induce states of deep meditation, trance, or heightened awareness. It can physically affect the human body and mind. This suggests these ancient cultures were not merely building structures, they were building instruments, enormous resonant chambers designed to interface with human consciousness itself. The language of stone, it seems, was not meant to be read. It was meant to be heard, a vibrational technology that turned entire temples into devices for spiritual experience. This shared acoustic blueprint forces us to listen more carefully to the silence of the ruins. What were they trying to make us hear? And what does this universal knowledge of sound's power tell us about the true purpose of these sacred sites? Perhaps the most tangible evidence of this lost global connection lies not on the surface, but beneath our feet. Legends from every corner of the world whisper of a hidden labyrinth, a web of subterranean tunnels connecting sacred sites across vast, impossible distances. These are not merely campfire stories. In the remote highlands of Ecuador, a vast cave system known as the Cueva de los Teos descends deep into the earth, with legends claiming its tunnels stretch all the way to Peru. Beneath the sands of the Giza plateau, ancient texts and modern radar scans suggest a complex network of chambers and passageways hidden below the pores of the Sphinx. And in the heart of Turkey, the breathtaking underground cities of Cappadocia, like Derinkuyu, descend 18 levels into the volcanic rock, capable of sheltering tens of thousands of people. These are not isolated shelters. They hint at a coordinated global effort. If even a fraction of these stories are true, they could represent the physical infrastructure of the global knowledge exchange, a literal underground highway system. Imagine a world where a catastrophic event, perhaps a comet impact or a rapid pole shift, made the surface of the planet uninhabitable. The survivors, possessing advanced knowledge, would have retreated to a safe, stable environment deep within the Earth. These tunnels would have been their sanctuary and their communication network. This hidden world would explain the most perplexing question of all. How could identical knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and acoustics appear simultaneously in Egypt, Peru, Turkey, and Cambodia? The answer might be that these civilizations were not developing in total isolation. They were connected not by surface trade routes, but by a secret subterranean network, allowing for the rapid and protected exchange of ideas, technologies, and blueprints. This hidden infrastructure would have preserved this precious knowledge through ages of surface-level chaos and cataclysm, only to be lost to us when the tunnels themselves were eventually sealed or forgotten. The global language of stone, it seems, was spoken in the silent, dark places of the world. A whispered secret passed through the earth itself. Perhaps the most visible symbol of this ancient connection is also the most iconic. Pyramids rise from the deserts of Egypt, push through the jungles of Guatemala, and stand on the plains of China. This is not a case of one culture borrowing an idea from its neighbor. This is a global phenomenon, a structural echo found on every continent that humanity has inhabited. From the stepped ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the smooth-sided monuments of Giza, from the massive temple complex of Angkor Wat in Cambodia to the mysterious pyramids of the Canary Islands, the form is unmistakable. The fundamental pyramid shape, a square base ascending to a point in the sky, appears again and again, often aligned with the cardinal directions and serving as a tomb, a temple, or a bridge to the heavens. How can we explain this? Is it simply the most logical way to build something tall and stable? That practical answer feels insufficient when you consider the sheer scale and precision involved. It is not just a pile of rocks, it is a deliberate geometric statement. The pyramid may represent a shared understanding of sacred geometry, a universal symbol for the primordial mound from which creation sprang. Its shape mimics the descending rays of the sun, a ladder for the soul to ascend, or a physical representation of the connection between the earthly plane and the celestial realm. This was not just an architectural style, it was a cosmological one. The consistent use of this form, often paired with the same astronomical alignments and geodetic knowledge we have already seen, suggests it was a primary symbol in the global stone language. It was a way to encode a specific understanding of the universe into the very landscape, a permanent monument to a power that was both earthly and divine. The global distribution of the pyramid is the most glaring clue left behind. a silent testament to a time when humanity's greatest architectural ambition was not to express cultural uniqueness, but to participate in a shared, sacred design. The stone's final secret is its impossible smoothness. Beyond the grand alignments and the sprawling pyramids lies a more intimate mystery, the enigma of the cut itself. How did ancient artisans shape granite, diorite, and basalt, some of the hardest stones on Earth, with a jeweler's precision? The evidence is etched into the very surface of these monuments, and it speaks of a technological prowess that defies conventional history. In Egypt, examine the sarcophagi inside the Great Pyramid. These are not rough stone boxes. They are made of granite so hard it requires diamond-tipped tools to work today, yet their surfaces are flawlessly flat and their corners perfectly square. Even more telling are the drill holes found in other artifacts. Core samples extracted from granite show spiral grooves that indicate a drill bit which sank through the solid rock as if it were butter, applying a pressure that modern engineers struggle to explain. This is not the work of copper chisels and sand. This is the signature of a lost industrial process. This same signature is stamped across the globe. Journey to the high plateau of Bolivia, to the ruins of Puma Punku. Here, the landscape is littered with shattered stone blocks, but to call them blocks is an injustice. They are geometric puzzles, each one precision cut from andesite, a stone harder than granite. Their surfaces are not merely flat, they are polished to a reflective, machine-like finish. They feature identical, complex notches and T-slots cut with a consistency that suggests mass production, not hand carving. Then look to the Inca walls of Cusco and Ollantaytambo. The stones are a breathtaking mosaic of irregular polygons, yet each one fits its neighbor so perfectly that the entire wall appears to be a single, fluid stone formation. This is not just aesthetic. This is a statement of profound technical ability, an ability that appears in both the old world and the new. This shared, global proficiency in hard stone quarrying and shaping is one of the loudest statements in the silent language of stone. It tells us that these cultures possessed more than just sophisticated astronomy and geometry. They commanded a formidable, perhaps even industrialized, knowledge of materials science. They understood the physics of cutting, drilling, and polishing on a monumental scale. The conventional narrative of Stone Age artisans patiently pecking away with primitive tools cannot account for the microscopic perfection found on these surfaces. The evidence points instead to advanced tools or techniques that have since vanished from history, a forgotten chapter in human ingenuity. Why would this specific, advanced craft appear in civilizations that supposedly never met? The answer seems written in the stone itself, a global testament to a lost age of technological mastery, whose echoes we are only now beginning to measure. This mastery over stone and sound finds its ultimate expression in the lifeblood of civilization itself, water. A ninth mystery flows through the ruins, revealing a global command of hydrology that rivals our own. From the Indus Valley to the deserts of Persia, ancient engineers designed water systems of breathtaking sophistication. In the planned cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, one finds not just wells, but a complex network of indoor bathrooms, covered drains, and a city-wide sewage system that would not be matched in Europe for thousands of years. This was not simply digging ditches, it was urban water management on an industrial scale. Meanwhile, in the arid landscapes of ancient Persia, engineers perfected the Qanat, a gently sloping underground tunnel that tapped into mountain aquifers and transported water for dozens of miles without a single pump, relying solely on gravity. This technology prevented evaporation and created lush oases in the heart of the desert. Then, across the ocean, the Maya of Mesoamerica carved intricate canal systems and constructed massive reservoirs to sustain their populous cities through seasonal droughts. These are not isolated flashes of genius. They represent a shared, critical knowledge base for survival. Each of these cultures, in their own environment, solved the same fundamental problems of water sourcing, purification, and distribution with an identical understanding of hydraulic principles and gravitational flow. How could such complex and identical civil engineering emerge independently across the globe? It points to a hydrological dialect within the broader language of stone, a universal understanding that water was the key to civilization itself. This shared blueprint for managing the planet's most vital resource suggests these societies were not just building temples to the gods, but were constructing ecosystems for humanity, guided by a common, advanced teacher. The silent stones, it seems, were once part of a living, flowing system, a testament to a forgotten age where humanity's greatest achievement was not conquering nature, but harmonizing with it on a global scale. Etched into the stones of Newgrange in Ireland, a great triple spiral greets the winter solstice sunrise. Carved into the rocks of the American Southwest, the same spiral appears, a mirror image crafted by cultures an ocean apart. This is the 10th mystery, a symbol so universal it seems to be a fundamental part of the human psyche, the spiral and its more complex cousin, the labyrinth. These are not random decorations. From the temples of ancient India to the coins of Minoan Crete, this motif is a profound philosophical statement, a shared glyph in the global stone lexicon. The spiral universally represents a journey, but not a journey across land. It is the journey of life, the path of the soul, and the very motion of the cosmos. Its presence in burial mounds like Newgrange connects it to the cycle of death and rebirth, suggesting our ancestors saw life not as a straight line, but as an ascending coil. The labyrinth deepens this concept. It is not a maze designed to confuse, but a single, winding, and purposeful path leading inexorably to a center. To walk a labyrinth is to perform a ritual, to enact the difficult, non-linear journey to enlightenment or self-discovery. Every turn represents a challenge, a moment of doubt, a necessary detour in the quest for understanding. The center is not just a destination, it is a state of being, a moment of clarity before the return journey brings that new wisdom back into the world. That these identical symbols appear in solar observatories, ritual spaces, and tombs across the globe indicates a shared metaphysical understanding, a unified concept of existence as a transformative, cyclical journey through the intricate workings of the universe itself. The spiral is the cosmos in motion. The labyrinth is the soul's path through it. Why would this specific, complex symbol for inner transformation be one of the most consistent messages left behind by lost civilizations? It suggests that their shared knowledge was not merely technological or astronomical, but deeply spiritual. They were speaking a language of the soul, using stone to remind us that the greatest journey is the one we take within. The very stone we have been admiring may not be natural at all. A radical idea challenges our most basic assumptions about how these monuments were built. The Geopolymer theory, proposed by materials scientist Joseph Davidovits, suggests the colossal blocks of the Great Pyramid were never cut from a quarry. Instead, they were cast in place like a form of ancient concrete. This was not simple mud brick. It was a sophisticated geopolymer, a manufactured stone created by chemically reacting limestone dust with a secret alkaline activator. This single idea could unravel numerous architectural enigmas. It explains the impossible perfection of the joints, where no mortar was needed because the blocks were poured and fused together. It accounts for the unique, bubbly texture found in the pyramid's core stones, a signature of a chemical reaction, not of natural geological formation. It even clarifies how blocks with embedded fossil shells could appear upside down, as if the liquid slurry was poured and set before the shell could settle. If this theory holds, then the pyramid builders possessed a lost high technology of chemistry. They were not just master carvers, they were alchemists, transforming loose stone dust into a synthetic rock harder and more durable than the original. The implications ripple far beyond the sands of Egypt. We find similar perfection in the andesite blocks at Puma Punku and the limestone marvels of other ancient sites. Could this same knowledge of geosynthesis have been a global secret? This would mean the global language of stone was not merely about moving and shaping rock. It was about creating the very substance itself. The master builders of the ancient world shared a recipe, a secret formula for literally growing their monuments from the earth. This was the ultimate mastery over the material world, a chemical wisdom so profound that we are only now, with our modern labs, beginning to decipher its possibility. What other secrets were mixed into that primordial concrete, and why was this world-changing technology lost to the dust of time? These perfect stone blocks and lost chemical formulas point to a deeper enigma, one found not in grand structures but in small, forgotten objects. Scattered across the globe are artifacts that defy explanation, known as out-of-place artifacts or UPARTs. They are the physical nouns and verbs of the global stone language, tangible proof of a sophistication that shatters our conventional timeline. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, a complex device recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck. This was not a simple statue or tool. It was an intricate bronze gear system, a precise analog computer capable of predicting planetary movements and lunar eclipses with stunning accuracy. Its complexity would not be matched for over 1,000 years. Then there is the Baghdad battery, a simple clay jar containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic substance like vinegar, it produces a measurable electric current. Was this a mere curiosity or evidence of ancient electroplating? Perhaps the most baffling is the Coso artifact discovered in the mountains of California. What appeared to be a simple geode, when cut open, revealed a porcelain cylinder surrounding a magnetic metal rod, an object bearing an uncanny resemblance to a modern spark plug. How could such a thing become encased in rock said to be 500,000 years old? These are not isolated oddities. They are a pattern of anomalies that collectively tell a different story. If even one of these objects is genuine, it forces a profound reconsideration of our past. The so-called Stone Age suddenly looks very different. It suggests that advanced technological knowledge, from precision engineering to electrical principles, was not a modern invention but a rediscovery. These artifacts are the scattered pieces of a lost world, hinting that the silent language of stone was once spoken by a civilization that mastered not only the earth and stars, but the very forces of physics itself. What other forgotten technologies lie buried, waiting to rewrite our history? The most enduring legend of a lost world may be more than a myth. Plato's account of Atlantis describes a powerful maritime empire, advanced in its technology and wisdom, that vanished beneath the waves in a single day and night of cataclysm. For centuries, this story has been dismissed as a philosophical allegory, but what if it holds a kernel of historical truth? A global cataclysm sinking a central, advanced civilization would provide the perfect missing piece to our puzzle. Imagine the survivors of such a disaster, scattered to the winds in their ships, carrying with them the precious cargo of a dying world's knowledge. These refugees would have become the teachers, the wise elders who guided the struggling, post-cataclysm cultures of Egypt, Peru, India, and the Americas. This would explain the sudden, seemingly miraculous appearance of sophisticated astronomy, engineering, and hydrology in these regions. The survivors did not bring gold or treasure. They brought blueprints, mathematical formulas, and a sacred understanding of the earth and stars. They taught the locals how to build structures that could withstand earthquakes, how to align temples with the solstice sun, and how to manage water with gravity-fed systems. This single event could account for the global language of stone, not as a case of independent invention, but as the shared inheritance from a common, vanished source. The legend of Mu, or Lemuria, a lost continent in the Pacific, offers a similar narrative for the spread of knowledge across Asia and the Americas. These stories, found in cultures worldwide, are not just tales of sunken lands, they are the collective memory of a profound rupture in human history. The advanced architecture we find is not the beginning of civilization, but the echo of its end, a reconstruction attempt by those who remembered a greater world. The stones themselves become the surviving library of this lost civilization, each perfectly cut block a page from a book we can no longer read. Could the search for Atlantis, then, be the search for the original teacher, the mother culture whose silent language we have been deciphering in ruins across the globe? This shared knowledge of the stars points to a cosmic clock ticking in the background of all human history. A 14th mystery is written in the slow, celestial wobble of our planet itself, a cycle so vast it defies ordinary human perception. The Earth spins like a top that is slowly losing its momentum, causing its axis to trace a wide circle in the sky over a period of approximately 26,000 years. This is the precession of the equinoxes, and it means that the backdrop of stars against which the sun rises on the spring equinox gradually shifts, moving through one constellation of the zodiac every 2,160 years. The fact that ancient cultures from the Maya to the Vedic seers of India not only knew about this 26,000-year cycle but built their entire world view around it is perhaps the most profound evidence of their advanced understanding. They saw time not in years or centuries but in grand cosmic ages. Their myths speak of successive world ages, each one ending in a great cataclysm, a cleansing flood or fire, followed by the dawning of a new sun, a new epoch for humanity. This is not a collection of random disaster stories. It is a unified cosmological history of the Earth, a prophecy of cyclical destruction and rebirth written in the slow-moving language of the stars. The Great Sphinx of Giza stands as a monumental marker of this knowledge. Its lion body is perfectly aligned to face the rising sun on the spring equinox. But around 10,500 years before the Common Era, the constellation rising directly behind the sun on that sacred morning was not the bull or the ram, but the lion, the constellation Leo. The Sphinx, a lion, was gazing directly at its celestial counterpart. This alignment suggests its creators were not just building for their own time, but for a time far in the future. They were encoding a message into the very landscape, using the precession of the equinoxes to stamp a date, to mark a specific point in the great year of 26,000 years. This shared, long-term astronomical calendar forces a staggering realization. These civilizations saw themselves as temporary custodians in a vast, repeating cycle. Their greatest monuments were not just tombs or temples. They were permanent observatories and alarm clocks set to go off not in a century, but in a millennium. They were leaving a warning, or perhaps a reminder, for a future humanity that would one day look up at the same stars and finally understand the message they left in stone. The silent language of stone was, in the end, a conversation across time itself. These civilizing gods all arrive from across the water. After the world has been shattered by flood or fire, a solitary figure emerges from the sea or a distant horizon, a being of immense wisdom and power. In Egypt, he is Osiris who brings the gift of agriculture, establishes laws, and teaches the people how to build a just society before his tragic descent into the underworld. Far across the Atlantic, in the high Andes, the Incas told of Viracocha, a tall, bearded man who appeared in the chaotic aftermath of a great deluge. He walked the land, commanding the stones to reshape themselves into magnificent cities and fortresses, and bestowed upon humanity the knowledge of farming, medicine, and social order before walking away across the Pacific waves. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl was revered as the patron of priests, the inventor of writing and the calendar, and the god of wind and wisdom who brought maize to humanity. And in the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, the earliest accounts speak of Ons, a bizarre amphibious being who rose from the Erythraean Sea. This creature, part man and part fish, spent his days teaching the scattered, primitive survivors everything from writing and mathematics to the principles of architecture and city building, returning to the ocean depths each night. The pattern is undeniable. A wise, often bearded stranger appears post-cataclysm, bearing the essential tools for civilization. This is not a collection of unrelated deities. It is a single archetype, a global memory of the same profound event. Could these myths be the distorted, poetic retellings of actual historical figures? Imagine a group of survivors from a technologically advanced maritime civilization, their own homeland now vanished beneath the ocean. Scattered and desperate, they make landfall on the shores of a traumatized world, encountering tribes struggling to survive in the ruins. To these primitive survivors, the newcomers would have seemed like gods. Their knowledge of astronomy allowed them to predict the seasons. Their understanding of engineering enabled them to build structures that defied nature. Their mastery of agriculture could turn wilderness into plenty. They did not come with weapons to conquer, but with blueprints to rebuild. Over generations, the memory of these flesh and blood teachers, these engineers and agronomists, would have been mythologized. Their ships became chariots of the sun, their practical tools became magical artifacts, and their teachings became divine commandments. The global language of stone, with its precise mathematics and celestial alignments, was their curriculum. The civilizing god archetype is the human face of this lost knowledge, the personification of the teacher who first taught humanity how to speak in stone. Why would a bearded figure be so consistent across cultures that had no contact? Perhaps because the original teachers themselves shared a common physical trait, a memory so distinctive it was etched into legend across the globe. These stories are not mere fantasy. They are the echoes of the first lesson, the moment the silent language of stone was first whispered to a waiting world. The evidence for these voyages is not confined to stone. It is written in the very flesh of the ancients. When scientists performed toxicological analyses on Egyptian mummies, they made a discovery that upended our entire understanding of ancient geography. They found traces of nicotine and cocaine, chemical signatures of two plants, tobacco and coca, that were exclusively native to the Americas. How could these substances find their way into the bodies of Egyptian nobility a millennium before the Common Era, thousands of years before Columbus set sail? This is not a matter of speculative art styles, it is a forensic fact locked in preserved tissue. It suggests a trade route not of trinkets, but of potent botanical knowledge stretching across the vast Atlantic. Then we have the colossal stone heads of the Olmec civilization in ancient Mexico. These imposing sculptures, with their broad features and distinctively realistic portrayals, have long sparked debate. To many observers, they bear a striking, and some would argue undeniable, resemblance to certain African facial types. While mainstream archaeology urges caution, the possibility remains a powerful one. Could these heads be portraits of actual visitors, carved by a Mesoamerican culture memorializing the foreign masters who brought them new knowledge. Even language holds potential clues, with some researchers pointing to similarities between certain words in ancient Egyptian and Mayan dialects. These disparate threads, the botanical, the artistic, the linguistic, weave together into a compelling picture. They suggest the oceans were not impassable walls but watery highways. If ancient mariners from Africa, the Mediterranean, or even a lost Atlantis could cross the Atlantic, and if seafarers from Asia could traverse the Pacific, then the global language of stone suddenly has its translators. These intrepid sailors become the missing link, the carriers of a shared intellectual cargo. They would not have transported multi-ton blocks across the sea, but something far more valuable and portable, the blueprint. They carried the knowledge of the megalithic yard, the seismic advantages of polygonal masonry, and the sacred geometry of the pyramid. A master architect from Egypt could have stepped ashore in Peru and, working with local laborers and materials, directed the construction of a wall using principles his own culture had perfected. The stones themselves are the durable, permanent evidence of these ephemeral contacts. They are the silent cargo that survived the voyage, the ideas made manifest in local granite and limestone. This transforms our view of these monuments from isolated wonders into nodes in a global network, outposts of a shared science established by the world's first great explorers. The question is no longer how these ideas developed independently, but who was navigating the world's oceans and what grand design were they trying to build across the entire planet. The stones themselves may be conduits for a force we can no longer perceive. Beyond their alignments to the stars and their perfect geometry lies a more subtle mystery, the concept of ley lines. These are hypothetical alignments, straight tracks of invisible energy said to crisscross the planet, connecting ancient sacred sites in a vast, hidden network. Imagine a web of power with nodes at places like Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, and Machu Picchu. Proponents of this idea argue that our ancestors were not just building on high ground for defense or near water for survival. They were deliberately positioning their most important monuments at powerful intersections of the Earth's own subtle energies. This suggests the global language of stone is not merely visual or symbolic. It is energetic. The very placement of these structures might have been dictated by a worldwide science of geomancy, the art of reading and harnessing the planet's life force. Think of the Earth not as a dead rock, but as a living being with its own circulatory system of magnetic currents and telluric flows. The ancient builders, it seems, could sense this energy. They built their temples and standing stones as acupuncture points for the planet, designed to amplify these forces for spiritual or even technological purposes. Why else would cultures across the globe with no apparent contact choose such specific and often geographically inconvenient locations for their greatest works? The consistent placement implies a shared sensitivity, a universal ability to read the Earth's energetic grid. This transforms our understanding of their purpose. These monuments were not just observatories or tombs, they were power plants of a forgotten science, tuned to the fundamental frequency of the Earth itself, making the planet an active participant in their silent, global conversation. This same impulse to enclose sacred space echoes in the shape of the ceiling overhead. A distinct architectural form appears again and again, a stone echo that resonates from the jungles of Central America to the sun-baked hills of the Mediterranean. It is the corbelled arch, a structure built not on a single curve, but on a principle of incremental steps. Builders would lay flat stones, each course projecting slightly inward over the one below, patiently narrowing the gap until the final capstone could seal the chamber at the top. It creates a powerful triangular or beehive-shaped void, a man-made cavern of stunning durability. You can stand inside the great Neolithic tomb of Newgrange in Ireland and witness this technique. Its massive stones layered for over 5,000 years to create a tomb that remains perfectly dry. Then cross the world to the Mayan city of Palenque and see the same principle in the so-called false arches that frame its doorways and roofs. The structural logic is identical. Even the magnificent Tholos tombs of Mycenaean Greece, like the famed treasury of Atreus, are monumental examples of this craft, their soaring, corbelled domes speaking of a shared architectural vocabulary. Why would this specific, complex method of roofing appear so consistently? The true arch, with its central keystone that locks everything in place, was a later invention. The corbelled vault is a different solution to the same fundamental problem: how to span a space with stone and create a chamber that will last for millennia. Its independent development across the globe is a powerful clue. It is not the transfer of a single blueprint, but the dissemination of a core engineering concept. Different cultures, faced with the same physical challenge of gravity and compression, arrived at the same elegant, stepped solution. This points to a universal logic in the language of stone, a foundational understanding of load and counterbalance that different minds in different lands discovered independently. The corbelled arch is more than a roof. It is a testament to a parallel evolution of the human intellect, a shared grammatical rule in our silent, global conversation with the earth. A towering tree connects every layer of existence. This is not a local legend but a global one, the concept of the world tree or axis mundi. From the immense ash tree Yggdrasil in Norse myths, whose roots drink from the wells of fate and whose branches hold the 9 worlds, to the sacred ceiba tree of the Maya, believed to stand at the very center of the world with its roots in the underworld and its branches in the heavens, this symbol is repeated with startling consistency. In India, the lotus rises from the murky waters of chaos on a long stem to bloom in the divine light, a perfect illustration of this cosmic axis. This was not merely a poetic image. It was a literal map of the universe, a profound metaphysical idea that the entire cosmos is structured in 3 interconnected tiers: the heavens, the earth, and the underworld, all linked by a central pillar. And our ancestors did more than just tell stories about this pillar, they built it. The pyramid, with its square base on the earthly plane and its apex pointing to the sky, is a direct architectural representation of this world tree. It is a stone mountain designed to be climbed, either physically or spiritually, to reach a higher state of being. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia were explicitly called the foundation between heaven and earth. The massive temple at Borobudur in Indonesia is a literal mandala in stone, a path for pilgrims to ascend through levels of consciousness toward nirvana, mirroring the ascent through the cosmic realms. Even a simple standing stone, a menhir driven vertically into the ground, could serve as a local axis mundi, a fixed point where the divine was believed to touch the mundane world. Why would this specific, complex model of a layered universe be carved into the mythology and masonry of cultures who never met? The shared concept of the axis mundi is perhaps the deepest layer of the global stone language. It is not about engineering or astronomy alone, but about the fundamental architecture of reality itself. It tells us that these lost civilizations shared more than blueprints. They shared a soul-deep understanding of existence, a unified vision of a cosmos where humanity was not an accident, but a participant in a grand, interconnected hierarchy. This was their ultimate truth, and they encoded it in the most permanent material they knew, ensuring that even if their words were lost, their world, you would stand forever in stone. The stones of an ancient Scottish fort are not merely stacked, they are glazed. High on a windswept hill, the ramparts have been transformed, their granite blocks fused together into a solid, glassy sheet. This is vitrification, a process that requires a sustained heat greater than 1,100 degrees Celsius, a temperature approaching that of a modern blast furnace. How could Iron Age people, centuries before the Common Era, have generated such impossible heat? The mystery deepens when you realize these are not isolated kilns or pottery workshops. These are entire sections of defensive walls, deliberately and systematically melted. The purpose is utterly lost to us. Was this the aftermath of a devastating attack, the scorched stone evidence of a weapon so advanced it could turn fortifications to glass? Or was this a deliberate, terrifying act of ritual, a symbolic sealing of a sacred site with a wall of fire so profound it became part of the stone itself? The very existence of these vitrified forts across Europe introduces a violent, fiery clause into the global stone language. It speaks of a knowledge not of building but of unmaking, a pyrotechnology of staggering power. If this technique was a localized secret, it is bizarre enough. But if similar sites of fused stone are one day confirmed in the highlands of Peru or the ruins of the Indus Valley, the implication becomes apocalyptic. It would mean this destructive, high-temperature science was another piece of a shared global knowledge, a final, dramatic testament to a lost world that understood the power of fire as intimately as it understood the movement of the stars. The silent language of stone finds its metallic echo in the forge and the crucible. While cultures across the globe were shaping mountains into monuments, they were also performing a different kind of alchemy, transforming raw earth into revolutionary metals. This shared knowledge of advanced metallurgy forms a brilliant parallel thread in the global tapestry. Consider the legendary Wootz steel from ancient India. This was not ordinary iron. Swords forged from this material were said to be so flexible they could be bent into a circle, yet so sharp and durable they could slice through a silk scarf falling through the air. This incredible quality came from a secret and precise process of superheating iron with specific carbon-rich materials, creating a steel with a distinctive, watery pattern on its surface. Then look to the astonishing bronze work of ancient China. The Shang dynasty produced colossal ritual vessels, intricately cast with touty masks and spiraling designs, using a piece mold casting technique of such sophistication that it has never been surpassed. This was not simple metal pounding. It was a high art form requiring an exact scientific understanding of alloys, temperatures, and mold making. And then we have the most mysterious metal of all, orichalcum. Plato described it as a gleaming, reddish gold metal, second only to gold in value, and he specifically linked it to the lost empire of Atlantis, where it adorned the walls of the central temple. While its exact composition is still debated, ancient texts suggest it was a sophisticated brass alloy, a man-made metal requiring the precise combination of copper, zinc, and sometimes other elements. The knowledge of smelting, of taking rock and using fire to extract pure metal, was transformative enough, but the knowledge of alloying, of intentionally mixing different metals to create a new substance with superior properties, represents a quantum leap in technological thinking. It is the difference between using a found stone as a hammer and engineering a new material from scratch. How could this profound, identical leap occur in India, China, the Mediterranean, and the Andes independently? The existence of such advanced and specific metallurgical processes in isolated cultures is a powerful clue. It suggests a common source for these technological secrets, a rapid exchange of the most valuable knowledge of the age. The global language was not just spoken in granite and limestone. It was whispered in the fires of the forge, a metallic dialect that gave humanity the power to shape its own destiny. The same sacred geometry that guides the human soul appears etched into the very streets of ancient cities. This is the architectural blueprint of the Mandala, a silent code that transforms stone and mortar into a map of the cosmos. A mandala is far more than a beautiful circular design. In its deepest essence, it is a geometric representation of the universe, a spiritual tool for meditation meant to lead the viewer from the outer layers of reality toward a central, enlightened core. And this exact same principle of a cosmic diagram was used to plan some of the world's greatest urban centers. Walk the Avenue of the Dead in Teotihuacan, Mexico. You are not just walking down a street, you are moving through a gigantic terrestrial mandala. The city's layout, with its pyramids of the sun and moon and the temple of the feathered serpent, is a deliberate geometric expression of celestial order, mirroring the precise arrangement of our solar system. The same profound pattern echoes across the world in the majestic floor plans of Gothic cathedrals. Their classic cross shape, with a long nave representing the earthly world and a transept forming the arms of the cross, is a mandala designed to guide a pilgrim's journey from the mundane entrance to the sacred altar, a symbolic voyage from the periphery of existence to its divine center. This is not a coincidence of style, it is the repetition of a universal rule. The builders were not merely architects, they were cartographers of the invisible, using a shared language of sacred geometry to create microcosms, small-scale models of the universe itself. This language was built on mathematical constants that seemed to defy time and culture. The golden ratio, a specific proportional relationship known as phi, appears in the dimensions of the Parthenon in Greece just as clearly as it does in the spiraling patterns of a nautilus shell. The value of pi, the fundamental relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter, is encoded into the very structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza. These are not rough approximations, they are precise, intentional applications of advanced mathematics. From the fractal-like complexity of Angkor Wat's towers to the perfect spheres envisioned by Islamic architects, the message is unified. There was a global curriculum, a shared spiritual and mathematical science that understood the universe to be built from geometry. Why would a temple in Cambodia and a cathedral in France both be constructed using the same invisible geometric rules, unless their builders were reading from the same lost instruction manual? This points to a time when science and spirituality were not separate subjects, but two sides of the same coin. The stone itself was their canvas, and the blueprint was the eternal, sacred shape of existence. This shared memory of a watery apocalypse is one of humanity's oldest and most persistent stories. From the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, where the god E warns Utnapishtim to build a great boat, to the Hindu scriptures where Manu is saved by a fish to repopulate the world, the narrative is eerily consistent. The indigenous Hopi people of North America tell of a world purified by flood, with only a few righteous survivors emerging to begin again. These are not just 500 similar tales, they are 500 echoes of the same catastrophic event, a trauma so profound it was seared into the collective psyche of our species. This points to a real geological disaster, likely the rapid melting of the ice sheets at the end of the last ice age. Vast quantities of water were released, raising global sea levels by hundreds of feet and drowning coastal civilizations in a relatively short span of time. For the survivors, it would have been the end of their world. Their great cities, their libraries, their entire way of life, all swallowed by the waves. In the desperate aftermath, the most vital task would not have been to rebuild that lost world, but to ensure its knowledge was never lost again. and so they turned to the only medium they knew would last: stone. The global language we have been deciphering, the precise astronomy, the earthquake-proof masonry, the sacred geometry, was not the beginning of human civilization. It was its desperate reboot. These monuments were not just temples or tombs, they were time capsules. Each perfectly aligned stone was a line of code from a lost operating system, a backup of advanced science and spirituality, carved in granite to survive any future cataclysm. The builders were not primitive people evolving toward complexity. They were the scattered children of a golden age, using the rubble of their world to leave a message for us, a warning and a gift written in the only language they knew would last forever. The very stones of our past might have been coaxed into place with song. Legends from cultures who built these wonders are filled with a curious and consistent theme: the idea that sound could move mountains. Tibetan monks tell of the power of long trumpets and chants to lift massive blocks. Indigenous stories from both the Andes and the Egyptian deserts whisper of priests who could make stones float by singing to them. For a long time, these accounts were dismissed as pure mythology, the fanciful explanations of a primitive people for feats they could not otherwise describe. But what if we have been dismissing the literal truth? Modern physics has begun to catch up with these ancient tales. Scientists have successfully demonstrated acoustic levitation in laboratory settings, using precisely tuned sound waves to suspend and move small objects, even droplets of liquid, in mid-air. The principle relies on creating a standing wave, a stable pattern of intense pressure and vibration that can counteract the force of gravity. If we can do this with tiny particles using our current, rudimentary understanding of sonic technology, what could a civilization with a masterful, perhaps intuitive, knowledge of resonance achieve? This suggests that the global language of stone was not a silent, written code of geometry and alignment. It may have been a living, vibrational technology, an art of commanding matter through specific, powerful frequencies. The monolithic stones scattered across the world might not have been dragged on log rollers by thousands of slaves. They could have been guided on a cushion of sound, humming with a resonant frequency that made them momentarily weightless. This would explain the otherwise inexplicable transport of 800-ton stones at Baalbek, or the placement of multi-ton blocks in the impossibly tight spaces of Inca walls. The workers would not have been straining against ropes, but rather orchestrating a symphony of vibration, using drums, chanting, or perhaps crystalline instruments tuned to the resonant frequency of the rock itself. The stones themselves were part of the instrument, chosen not just for their visual beauty, but for their acoustic properties, their ability to carry and amplify a specific note. This transforms our entire understanding of these sites. The oracle chamber in Malta was not just for altered states of consciousness. It was a training ground or a control room for mastering this sonic science. The pyramid was not just a tomb, but a massive resonant chamber, a device for focusing and amplifying planetary vibrations. The global language, then, was not just seen in the stars and felt in the earthquakes. It was heard, a lost harmony between humanity, stone, and sound, a technology so advanced it appears to us not as science but as magic. What other secrets are still vibrating, unheard, within the silent stones we walk past every day? This mathematical signature is the silent syntax of the entire architectural language. The stones themselves are encoded with irrational numbers, values like pi, and the golden ratio that cannot be expressed as a simple fraction, and which appear to govern the very shape of reality. The Great Pyramid of Giza presents one of the most famous examples. Its base perimeter, when divided by twice its original height, yields a figure that is essentially 2 times pi. This means the pyramid's very dimensions mathematically model a sphere, with its height representing the radius and its perimeter the circumference. This is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate, breathtakingly sophisticated equation rendered in limestone and granite. Across the sea, the Parthenon in Greece stands as a textbook illustration of the golden ratio, a proportion known as phi, approximately 1.618. The facade of this temple fits perfectly within a golden rectangle, a shape that can be subdivided infinitely into smaller golden rectangles, creating a spiral of perfect proportions. The same ratio dictates the spacing of its columns and the relationship between various elements of its design. Why would two cultures, separated by vast distances and centuries, both choose to embed these specific, complex constants into their most sacred structures? The answer lies in the nature of the constants themselves. Pi defines the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. Phi describes a unique ratio where the whole is to the larger part as the larger part is to the smaller part, a proportion that is inherently and mysteriously pleasing to the human eye. These are not human inventions, they are universal discoveries, fundamental relationships that exist independently of us. We find phi in the spiral of a nautilus shell, the branching of trees, and the arrangement of a sunflower's seeds. We see pi in the orbits of planets and the structure of swirling galaxies. The ancient builders were not just using pretty numbers, they were incorporating the very operating code of the universe into their work. Their architecture was a conscious mirror of cosmic order, a way to ground the abstract laws of mathematics in the physical world. This shared reverence for pi and phi reveals a profound layer of the global language. It was not merely about aligning with stars or surviving earthquakes. It was about encoding the fundamental principles of creation itself into permanent stone, creating a library of cosmic law written in a dialect of sacred geometry that the entire world seemed to understand. The tools of the ancient stonemason were never meant to remain solely in the physical world. They became the sacred emblems of a spiritual tradition that has endured for centuries. Modern Freemasonry, along with other esoteric orders, holds at its very heart the symbols, legends, and moral allegories of the master builder. The square and compass are not merely decorative jewels, they are instruments of cosmic order. The square represents morality, the grounding of one's actions in truth and virtue. The compass symbolizes the mind's ability to draw boundaries around its passions, to aspire toward higher understanding. Then there are the allegorical stones themselves, the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar. The rough, uncut block represents the individual in their natural, uneducated state, full of potential but lacking refinement. The smooth, finished cube is the ideal, the person who has, through diligent effort and the application of knowledge, perfected their own character. This entire system is a metaphor for internal architecture, for building a spiritual temple within oneself, using the same principles of precision, balance, and integrity that were once used to build with physical stone. The most profound story in this tradition is the legend of Hiram Abif, the master builder of King Solomon's temple. He is murdered for refusing to divulge the secret master's word, the ultimate key to the builder's art. His story is a dramatic echo of the themes we have traced across the globe: the tragic loss of a supreme wisdom, the murder of a teacher, and the desperate attempt to preserve a sacred knowledge from being lost forever. The fact that these specific motifs, centered entirely on stone and its master craftsmen, form the core of these secretive societies is not a random historical accident. It suggests a direct, if hidden, lineage. When the great civilizations that spoke the global language of stone fell into ruin, their practical science of astronomy and engineering may have been lost to the masses, but their philosophical and spiritual essence did not vanish entirely. It appears to have been preserved, encoded into the rituals and symbols of initiated groups. These fraternities became the librarians of a forgotten world, safeguarding the blueprint not for physical pyramids, but for the pyramid of the self. They are the last living thread connecting our modern age to that ancient, unified understanding. The rituals performed in Masonic lodges today are a symbolic reenactment of the original pronouncements made in stone, a whispered echo of the master builder's final lesson that the greatest temple we will ever build is not made of granite, but of our own refined character. Our journey through these silent monuments reveals a world profoundly connected, a civilization of the mind whose roots run far deeper than we ever suspected. The stones have spoken a consistent truth, from the celestial clocks of Giza and Chaco Canyon to the earthquake-defying walls of Peru and Japan. They have whispered of a shared unit of measurement, the Megalithic Yard, and hummed with a forgotten science of acoustic levitation. They have shown us a global obsession with the pyramid form, the serpent symbol, and the labyrinth, all pointing toward a unified spiritual and technological heritage. This is not the story of isolated, primitive cultures slowly discovering fire. This is the echo of a golden age, a sophisticated global network that understood the mathematics of the cosmos, the mechanics of the planet, and the very resonance of stone. We are not looking at the beginnings of human achievement, but at the scattered remnants of its peak, a legacy preserved in granite and legend after a great forgetting. The overwhelming evidence compels us to rewrite our history books, to consider that our past was not a linear climb from simplicity, but a cycle of cataclysm and rediscovery. These ancient sites are not mere ruins, they are the surviving library of a lost parent civilization, a library whose books are made of mountain ranges and whose pages are aligned with the stars. The message has been waiting in plain sight for millennia, encoded in the only medium durable enough to carry it across the ages. Our ancient ancestors were not primitive. They were the inheritors and guardians of a wisdom we are only now, with our satellites and lasers, beginning to decipher. They left us a puzzle in stone, a challenge to look beyond the surface and remember who we truly are. Which of these mysteries speaks most powerfully to you? Was it the impossible precision of the stone cuts, the global memory of a great flood, or the haunting idea of a subterranean world? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to join us as we continue to explore the hidden depths of our shared, forgotten history.